All right, so the year's 2011, and people start hearing about this bar that's opened. At least for me, what I started hearing was there was this bar that opened on the stretch of Williamsburg that at the time felt a little bit of a distance to get to, right? Now, obviously, you tell people where this bar is, and it is quite in the heart of Williamsburg. But at the time, people were talking about this bar that, you know, had this weird New Orleans vibe, not weird, but very cool. And of course, a lot of absinthe. And of course, that bar is Maison Premiere. And that's what we're going to talk about today. This is the Buildout. I'm your host, Adam Teeter. And we are joined with by co-founder of Maison Premiere, Joshua Boissy. Joshua, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Yeah, thanks, Adam.
So obviously, I want to get to how the bar opened. But before we get there, we have to tell your story.
Sure.
So how did you start in this industry?
You know, long story short, it goes back to childhood. My mom operated restaurants as a manager, general manager.
Okay.
After school, I was doing homework at a restaurant table in the dining room. Before I knew it, 10, 11 years old, I was sweeping the floors and helping out. And this Greek owner of this Italian restaurant in Concord, New Hampshire, he slipped me a $20 bill for the sweeping of the floor. And I just remember how powerful that moment was for me. My mom, as a single mom raising two children, didn't have a lot of money. And so that was a moment where I was like, wow, like I can do a little bit of work and make money. That was pretty exciting. So I basically started in the business at a young age, worked in like local chains, Applebee's, Ruby Tuesdays, mom and pop restaurants, until I moved to South Florida, where I was going to college in Fort Myers, kind of got into like martini and sushi bars, and then moved to Miami, where I got into the nightclubs and nightlife. I worked for the Ritz on South Beach, and then I worked at Nikki Beach, which is this all-day beach club. And this is like 2004, 2005. So, Nikki Beach and South Beach was just a machine. Thousands of people a day. It was just a huge music venue and beach club. From there, I made my way to New York on an opportunity and started working at Buddha Bar in the meatpacking district.
Okay. So
and
still the nightclubs.
Nightclubs, restaurants, I'm skipping a lot. So just to kind of lay it out, probably 15 to 20 restaurants I had under my belt before becoming a partner at a restaurant in New York City in 2007.
Okay, so in 2007, what is that restaurant that you become a partner in?
I moved to Williamsburg June 2006. I lived above this failed French restaurant called Le Barracuda.
Okay.
It had just opened up. It had been there for 6 months. It was around the corner from Barcade. And there used to be Dumont.
Yep.
And so I was living above this restaurant, and I met the owner one day, French guy named Jean-Pierre Marquette. He owned a bunch of bakeries in New York. He was a pastry chef back in the day at Maxime's in New York. Okay. So he went to one of the greatest, baking schools, pastry schools in Paris, had some amazing apprenticeships, and eventually made it to the top in New York, which, Maxime's in his day was probably the equivalent of like, Le Bernardin.
Yep.
And so met him, a few weeks later, I received a business card on my door. It says to call him. Thought it was bizarre. I didn't know the guy. I gave him a call. He picks me up. We go for a ride. It's raining out. I have no idea what this is about. And then he asked me if I want to be a partner in his restaurant. And I just thought that was bizarre. At the time, I was like 21 years old.
Yeah,
I had no money. I didn't know anything about running a restaurant. I worked in them, but I never, managed or owned. And he said, they had built the restaurant cash. It had a 12-year lease. Rent was dirt cheap. It was $1,500 a month.
Wow.
Expenses were very low then, as you can imagine back in 2006, 2007. And his partners were willing to walk away basically for nothing and just lose their money because, there was no money coming in, and they realized that the show was about to end. And he needed someone to basically grab the wheel and run with it. He wasn't an ops guy.
Okay.
So we started talking. I called my mom, tell her the story. I call him back. I said, how much would it require for them to leave? And he said, I think $10,000. And they put in, I think, $150,000 each.
Okay.
Guys. So they're about to lose a lot of money. I call him back and I said, I have $8,000. And my mom says, you have nothing to lose, honey. I believe you. If you put everything you have into this, you can do it. And if not, you can go back to doing what you're doing.
Yep.
And I was like, done. Call him, said I have $8,000. We did a deal. I walk in with a freezer bag of $8,000 cash.
A freezer bag?
Freezer bag. It was like, that's because I would keep it in a safe. I don't think I had a checking account. Maybe I had a checking account, but nothing in it. But, working in restaurants, there wasn't a lot of money
it's all cash.
to store. Didn't have like credit cards and stuff at that time. And so I gave him $8,000 in a freezer bag. I remember shaking hands with him. He said, congratulations. And then he walked out and I wasn't really sure what to do. I was like, so what is it? I didn't have a manual. There wasn't really like an overview of the business. This is how things work. And that was like the most terrifying day because I had just signed up for, something that I didn't really know how to do. But in time, I threw myself into it. I lived above it. So I threw all of my time into this and I just started to build it, one day at a time. And the day I took over, there was 2 cooks in the kitchen, neither who spoke English and I didn't speak Spanish, and there was no front of the house. So effectively, I was the entire front of the house the day I took over. And the sales were probably $6,000 a week. I mean, you couldn't get any worse. It was the biggest failure you can imagine. So starting at zero.
Why do you think why was it failing? Was there any one thing?
I think, what they were after, he was kind of pursuing, there's a gentleman who owns, I'm trying to think of his name now. He owns like Bar to Back on Smith Street. And that guy has had a little empire.
Like an empire, yeah.
That guy's similar age to Jean-Pierre. Jean-Pierre now is probably 70, but they're of the same era. That guy comes to New York, with very little and builds this whole bistro empire. He had Cafe Noir and Bar to Back. There was a whole bunch of them. And Jean-Pierre lived in Carroll Gardens and drove by Bar to Back every day. And I think it just drove him crazy that here's this guy who built a French bistro and is crushing it. And he wanted in. And Jean-Pierre had a really good eye for understanding neighborhoods. Being a New Yorker for so long, he saw Williamsburg's potential. He saw the artist. He saw, he's driving his car and he can see the age of the kids, the density of it. He had a bakery in Bushwick. His manufacturing facility for his bakery was in Bushwick. And he had a location in Smith Street, Court Street, retail stores. So every day he's driving by Williamsburg and he's seeing the evolution. And so he wanted in. So he built this restaurant. But I think at the end of the day, when I took it over, it was a really sad version of what a French bistro is supposed to be. Just like following the basics. Like the look, the feel, the spirit, the menu, the branding, even the chairs. Like there's a model. And if you just go out and you kind of study and reverse engineer, it's not hard to say, okay, the walls tend to be yellow and the chairs tend to look like this. And like, the menus tend to have these things, and you kind of reverse engineer, which is what I did day one, is I bought every book on Amazon I could on French bistros and brasseries and cafes, and probably 30 books arrived.
Wow.
And I just started immersing myself, and I'm reading about them, looking at photos of them, going out to all the great versions of French bistros and brasseries in New York, and reverse engineering them and just analyzing every piece, literally the door handles. Is it brass? Is it, what is it made out of? And we didn't have a budget to build and emulate like the places I admired, but you could start small. You could start off with the salt shakers that are just bizarre, like the ones that were on the table. It didn't make any sense, but having the right one felt right, and it was piece by piece, taking the wrong silverware and eventually putting the right one that felt like a bistro and the right table, the right plates and glassware. And so it was piece by piece as a few bucks came in, instead of putting it in our pockets. I took the lowest salary possible to survive, pay my bills, but that was nothing more. And every dollar just went back into the business. And we did this for over 2 years. And it just started to work. It was just every day improving. That was the objective, is every day we're going to do something new. It may be putting dimmers on the lights to change the light bulb from the super bright daylight version to an Edison bulb. That would set the mood. Adding candles, adding mirrors, going to, flea markets in Bushwick and finding lamps and mirrors and pieces that would kind of make the space feel cozy. And so that process went on for about 2 years. And the idea was like, we're broke on a budget. We can't emulate the greats, but maybe we'll be like this provincial, like country bistro. Which was also kind of like in its own league. Like we weren't really going up against anyone like that. There was a version of bistros that was quite popular. And I don't think we were like competing with that. So
you weren't trying to be Balthazar.
No, it was like we had this bohemian, artistic, French, weird, and that totally exists. After going to Paris, I realized like there is like a genre of this. It's like these little artistic neighborhood places that are quirky. And, you could tell they made them for nothing, but they have soul. It's good music and there's owners there, and he's like injecting it with his soul. And that's exactly what we did. And so Krystof, who's now my business partner and co-founder of, Maison Premiere, he and I became friends before Barracu happened, and he came on board within weeks of me taking over. And I have to attribute a lot of our success to him. Even though he wasn't a partner, he came on as a server, bartender to help me. And then eventually, when I could afford to, I made him a manager and then general manager. But from day one, he took ownership of the music, started playing soul and funk and indie rock music because he was in the music business from Philadelphia. He had worked for The Roots and Justin Timberlake. So he was leveraging his music, love for music and knowledge to add soul and kind of youthfulness, energy to the place, which gave it a really unique vibe. Brunch, you'd walk in and it was like soul and funk music really loud. 10 a.m., 9 a.m., which was like, it was fun to be there.
Yeah.
And then products, he went through the beers and wines and basically gutted it and started like serving really high quality craft beers instead of Stella on tap. It was like Captain Lawrence back when Captain Lawrence first came out.
No one had that. Yeah, exactly.
La Coulombe coffee, when La Coulombe only had one store in New York. It was in Tribeca. This is before they, sold to venture capitalists.
Yeah.
And so, he focused on products, what he could do to make products better. And I focused on how to make the story and narrative and the business and the vision come together. And we just didn't really plan it. It just happened. He came in and nerded out on his things, and we'd stay late at night. And I think every morning we were both there at 9 a.m. We would work until 2 a.m. We just lived there essentially. And in time, all of those improvements and all of those things we did, the business just kind of took off. And so within a year, we hit $1 million in sales. Within 2 years, we hit $2 million. And so we had about 60 employees after 2 years, starting off with 2 in the kitchen. So we learned a lot.
No press
at all, which is kind of like where Maison came about, is because we were so frustrated with the amount of good that we did and the amount of progress that we had made and how, Williamsburg was so underserved at this time. And we felt like it deserved some recognition.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest issue, and we learned this the hard way, is like not rebranding the name was a huge mistake, because you know this, but the media world a lot of times, and I don't know how it is now, but back then, they weren't going to re-review you. If Le Barracu was Le Barracu, it was like rare for them to like re-review it unless it was a high-profile place, high-profile chef, or we were nobodies. No one knew who we were. If you Googled us, nothing came up, right? And it's different now, but then, we were unknown. So, no attention, no love, but the neighborhood was there. The community was there. We're doing 300-400 covers for brunch every Saturday, every Sunday, lines down the street for brunch. And it just became a neighborhood institution. So that's the story of Barracu. And I'm not sure if it segues into Maison, but basically a couple years in, so I took over in 2007. Yep. By 2008, Krystof had an itch to be a partner.
Okay.
I was kind of preoccupied with trying to just fix Barracu, but he was started looking at spaces, even though we didn't have any money, and we shouldn't have.
So he wanted to do something else.
He wanted to do something. He wasn't a partner in this, and he was just, and I think he saw the potential. He's 9 years older than me. He had been in Williamsburg for a while, and I think he just saw that there was huge potential in us, in what we had achieved with Barracu, that if we did something of our own from day one, that we could write the narrative from day one, we could develop it our way. Because we inherited a lot of things with Barracu. And so, long story short, he found a space on Bedford Avenue, 298 Bedford Avenue, 2009.
Okay.
And we took Jean-Pierre over there, who was our partner, showed him the space. It was a building from 1890, old brick building, but it had kind of an illegal church. Those like old churches you used to see. It had like the metal gate, cages on the window, it had 2 metal doors. And inside, when you go inside, this thing had been on the market for a long time. When you go inside, it was 2 illegal apartments.
Okay.
So Maison, when you walk in, it's 1 room, but it used to be 2. There was a wall down the middle, which is why there's double doors and double windows. So it was 1 entrance on the left, 1 entrance on the right. But it's a commercial space that had been
turned into 2 illegal apartments, because at that point, no one was opening commercial stuff there,
And no one even lived in this for decades. So it was sitting empty. There was water damage, ceiling had collapsed, floors were rotting out. I mean, it was a total dump. And we showed Jean-Pierre the space, and he thought we were crazy. He was like, this is going to cost a fortune, just a white box. But around this time, we had gone to Paris. A part of turning Le Barracuda around, within the first year of me taking over, Jean-Pierre took me to Paris. My first time on an international trip. And it just totally blew my mind. And I was so inspired. And he took me everywhere. And on that trip, two things happened. One, we found Chez Jeannot in the La Marais neighborhood, this beautiful pastis and absinthe bar that had a horseshoe bar. Now, it was a French bistro, and it is a French bistro.
Yep.
If you looked at it, you wouldn't see much resemblance. But super narrow horseshoe bar right by the front door. So when you walk in the door, like the bar is like right there, but it creates this energy.
Yep.
And I remembered the energy. It was very different than American bars, like these long, straight bars.
And often off to the side somewhere, you have to walk to get to them from the front door.
But this, because there was a horseshoe, people were all around the front, and there was this immense energy, and there was a glass wall, and you could kind of see shadows behind it. And I just thought it was like the most interesting design of a bar. Not the material, it wasn't necessarily like detailed.
Yeah.
But just the concept of that shape I loved. And then the whole room smelled like pastis and absinthe. I had no idea what that was. It was banned in America. When we were there, this is 2007, it hadn't yet been legalized in the States. For 90 years, our parents and ourselves had never even tried it. But we knew what pastis was. So anyways, we're there. And it's a vibe, it's young, it's buzzy, it's artistic, and we just felt something so strongly from it. On that trip, Krystof set us up at, we went to see some winemakers in Loire, we went to Samir, we went to Ted Bro in Chinon. I'm sorry, we went to Bernard Baudry in Chinon, spent an afternoon with him, which was incredible. And then we went to the Combier distillery in Samir, and they had these copper stills there where they make the Combier orange liqueur. These copper stills were designed by Gustave Eiffel, who designed engineered the Eiffel Tower. That's how old they are. Go back to the 1800s. And Ted Bro, this American scientist, absinthe historian, entrepreneur, was working to legalize absinthe in the United States. He had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars of his own money to find pre-prohibition absinthes, to reverse engineer them, and to prove with science that there were no hallucinogenics in it.
Right.
Which he successfully proved to the FDA and got absinthe legalized. Well, I happened to be there before it was legalized, tasting jade absinthe that he was making, that Krystof set this trip up. So Krystof planted this seed. I have no idea why. He just like, I thought it'd be cool to go check out this absinthe distillery. Well, light bulb goes off because I just went to Chez Jeannot and they had the largest absinthe and pastis program. So I see this horseshoe bar, the largest pastis and absinthe program that I've ever seen in my life. Dozens and dozens and dozens. And then we go to this absinthe distillery and taste absinthe. And then within that next year, absinthe's legal in America for the first time in 90 years.
That's crazy.
So all these things came together, right? And that was like the early seeds, but we didn't know what to do with them. They were just there. And later on, when we started to build what became Maison, we pulled those seeds out of the drawer and said, I think this could be the foundation for making our bar really different.
So you have the seeds, you know that your business partner wants to do his own thing, right? Something that's not, because of something that he didn't come in to join. How did you find the money? I mean, what conversation was that like? Did you go out and raise? Did you guys have funds from the success of the restaurant? And, did all of you go into it together, or how did that work?
It was, we shouldn't have been looking at space because we didn't have the money. And we were. We found the space, and Jean-Pierre said it's going to take $150,000 to white box it. But we convinced him with our passion and our persuasion that we thought we could do something really powerful here. And we spoke to the landlord. We're able to negotiate a really long-term lease, which was kind of unheard of, which Jean-Pierre knew would be a really great investment. If we had a long-term lease, he felt differently about that. She gave us a 25-year lease.
Wow.
Which, obviously was one of the greatest things we ever did.
Yes.
Considering where the neighborhood is now. So that made him feel really comfortable in investing. He agreed to give us $130,000 to begin the project.
Okay.
I think we all knew that wasn't going to be enough, but in those days, we had no idea how much it was going to be.
Exactly.
I had never built the place. I took over Barracuda, which was already built.
Right.
And I, redesigned it and rebranded it. But this was like gutting a space and doing electric and plumbing.
Yeah,
HVAC.
real construction.
Never done it. Jean-Pierre had some experience. But so long story short, we had 130. we gutted the space down to the studs, and we white boxed the whole thing, electric plumbing, got the white box together. And then the global financial crisis hits.
Yep.
Lehman and Bear Stearns and the meltdown of the financial markets. And so Jean-Pierre wasn't able to get an additional line of credit, which he was counting on. Obviously, financing from anyone was virtually impossible.
Yep, totally.
There was no private investors. So we were sitting with this space and had no money to finish it, which gave me a lot of time to obsess over the details, and Krystof and I a lot of time to kind of, mull over, the direction in which the brand was going to evolve and kind of obsess over certain parts of it, which I think worked to our benefit. But ultimately, we called our accountant out of desperation and said, "Do you know anyone that'll lend us money? Because we're paying rent and we're sitting here, and this thing's going to eat us alive. We have to do something with it." And of course, the accountant got back to us and said, "I know these guys in Queens, Carlos and Carlos. They do lending." And I was like, "Carlos and Carlos, is this real?" It's like the father's Carlos and the son's Carlos. Carlos and Carlos, two Colombian guys in Queens who lend high interest loans, 24% interest. And this is 2009. And so we meet with them. It goes well.
They like you.
They like us. They agree to give us a $150,000 loan. They ask for personal guarantees, corporate guarantees. Jean-Pierre puts up his building. I put up the shares of Barracu. If this thing doesn't work out, we're going to lose it. We're going to lose everything we have.
Yeah.
And we did it. We got the 150.
Wow.
Interest only payments every month. I think we're like $5,000 alone, just on interest. The money we burned through and needed another 100. We went back. We got another 100. So we're 250,000 in on top of the 130 we spent. And we ran out again. And then at the end, I put in what I had, which wasn't much, but I think it was $40,000, which was a lot to me at that time.
Yeah,
I was a young guy. And so we finally finished the construction, open in 2011 after signing a lease in 2009. And made it through, opened up. We didn't have the garden at that time. We didn't have a kitchen because there just was no space or money for one.
Yeah.
So it was really like Maison Premiere Volume 1. It was part 1, which was, we had 15 oysters the night we opened. We had about, 15, 20 cocktails. That was it. There wasn't even bread.
So basically when you opened, it's like, we're going to serve oysters and cocktails.
Yeah.
And that's basically it, because that's what we can afford to do.
Yeah, well, it wasn't that's what we could afford. It was, when we were building Maison, it's hard to imagine there was less than 10 craft cocktail bars in New York City. Mm-hmm. And I can name them. I was thinking on the way here, and I was like, it was Pegu Club, Milk and Honey, Little Branch, Clover Club, Death and Company. And there may have been a couple more, but there wasn't that many more that were
And there was none really in Williamsburg.
There was none in Williamsburg. And I'm talking about like serious craft cocktails.
Yeah, totally.
There was, 8? Maybe there was 9, but that was it. That's hard to imagine now that every restaurant has cold draft and is a craft cocktail bar today. It's incredible. But during that era, those places that were doing craft cocktails were amazing, but they didn't have real narratives. They didn't have like history. They didn't have food or service that aligned with some bigger narrative. And that's like, not to criticize, because what they were doing was amazing. But, anyone who's been to Little Branch or you're not going to, these kind of places for some big narrative because the soundtrack ties in with this and the story and the art. And so we felt with what we were trying to say, we had so much to say, so much to communicate with what we were building, that we wanted to build a bar that had like heritage to it. We wanted it to feel like this heritage American bar that had like stood the test of time in its like physical presence. We wanted it to tell a story of like America through music, through the drinks. It sounds corny, but it was like going to New Orleans. Why does it feel so good? It's history, it's soul, it's jazz, it's the oyster and seafood culture, it's the Cajun and Creole, it's like all this stuff, but it's all history, right? It's like this deep culture of so many things that are like American. And so we really felt the need to like build a bar that when you stepped into it, felt like I'd been there for years, but that was real.
So let me take a quick step back, because obviously you have the idea, you're inspired by this bar in the Marais in Paris, but you, before opening Maison, are running a French bistro. So how did French bistro go to become high-end, amazing cocktail bar? Like, where did you guys get the bug and decide we want to be in this group of bars, right? We talked before we started recording that you would go into Manhattan a lot, but was that it? Was that you were going to drink at these bars? Did you see the financial opportunity that there was not a bar in Brooklyn? Like, where did that come from for you? Because I don't think a lot of people at that time would have thought we need to open a craft cocktail bar.
It was connecting the dots. I think it was, we used to go to employees only as employees. We would get out of work at Buddha Bar at 1:30 in the morning. And I forgot employees only. And we would go there. And we would go to these places because we were younger, early 20s, going out, craft cocktail bars. It was interesting to us. It was different. So we kind of fell in love with craft. And then, so that's one piece of it. And that just happened. And then we fell in love with Paris. Mm-hmm. Because of our immersion with Barracu, we became like Francophiles and just obsessed over anything French. French wine and French design and French culture and the ingredients and, looking at old recipes and going to Paris. And all of that was there. So it was like some type of French, desire to be French. And then Krystof was reading about cocktails in this old book from like the early 1900s called like New Orleans cocktails, old cocktails and how to mix them, or I forget the title, I'm messing it up. And it was this old black and white cocktail manual. Mm-hmm. And he started reading about New Orleans. And before he knew it, he was like, there's something in New Orleans. I think we should go to New Orleans. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, jazz and blues and the seafood and oysters and like the Mississippi, and like absinthe was coming to America via New Orleans, and the Sazerac, and there was like all this stuff. And I was like, we need to go down there. I had never been. I didn't know much about it. I went down alone. He was running the restaurant at the time because we're still running Barracu. Let's not forget. We're building Maison. We have no infrastructure. We have no team. It's us. So he was holding down Barracu as the general manager. I got on a plane alone with a camera. I didn't have an iPhone. And I went down to New Orleans. And as soon as I arrived, it was like mid-afternoon on like a Tuesday or something. And I start walking through the French Quarter. And I just knew the soul, the gas lamps and the narrow doors and the cast iron and Spanish tiles and just all the soul and the music you could hear in every alleyway and bar. And then I started going out to all the institutions, Arnaud's and Galatoire's and French 75 House, Arnaud's French 75 and the Napoleon House and Commander's Palace and Café du Monde. It was just one after another. And all of them possessed such history and soul and spirit. And so I was trying to figure out what makes soul and spirit that's so powerful. And I just became obsessed with analyzing them in great, detail. And then I went to Felix's restaurant, which is across the street from Acme Oyster Bar. Mm-hmm. I came out of Arnaud's, drunk off French 75s and Sazeracs, smoking a cigar inside, which you could still do. Chris Hanna, Jewel of the South. Chris Hanna was the bartender there for many, many years. I met him there.
That's amazing.
He was the bartender. He's wearing a white tuxedo and bow tie, and it was just incredible. This was just unheard of. I came from New Hampshire, living in Brooklyn. There was nothing like this. I come out, buzz, and I see the lines out front of Acme and Felix's. And I'm like, what's going on over there? I walk over there, and they're oyster bars. They're competing. Like in Philadelphia, the two Pat's and Gino's steaks.
Yeah, totally.
It was like this weird duel going on, and there were lines formed in front of both, and so everyone's kind of deciding which one you're going to get in. And Felix's looks older, Acme's looks a little more commercial. It is, but I went to both. And the char-grilled oysters, I'm sitting at the oyster bar, and the shuckers, this African-American gentleman, he's shucking, telling stories. Everyone's excited. There was just an energy from oyster bars that I never seen before. You didn't see it in New York going to Aqua Grill or Grand Central. It wasn't the same.
Yeah.
And so I came back from the trip with lots of ideas and lots of photos and lots of things. But I said to Krystof, the story is it's a New Orleans inspired bar. Mm-hmm. It's Sazeracs, it's jazz and blues and oysters, and we need an oyster bar. At the time, Maison wasn't supposed to be an oyster bar. It was going to be a craft cocktail bar with a French inspired design. And then we call our designer. We had a banquette. Where the oyster bar is, that was a banquette. Oh, wow. I have renderings of this and models of this in my office still. And we called the designer and said, can we change that and put a oyster bar there? And he's like, it's going to be really tight, but let's see what we can do. Well, custom fabricated everything, had everything custom made, and we were able to pull it off. And so that trip told us it needed to be oyster bar. So we had the craft cocktail thing we saw. We wanted oysters because we saw it was like an opportunity to do something that created energy and buzz. There was no cocktail bar in New York with oysters. Mm-hmm. Imagine that. There wasn't one. There was oyster bars like Aqua Grill and Grand Central.
Yep, totally.
But there weren't craft places that were doing raw bar oysters. So we were like, well, this is interesting. And then the absinthe story. But in New Orleans, the old absinthe house. I went to the old absinthe house. There's this marble fountain. I'm like, I want an absinthe drip. It doesn't work. It's a dive bar now. I couldn't believe it. There's this historic building called the Old Absinthe House. It goes back to the 1700s. Mark Twain and Andrew Jackson used to hang out there.
Yeah.
And I can't get an absinthe there. It's a dive bar. I was mortified. And so I started looking everywhere in New York, everywhere in New Orleans. Couldn't find an absinthe fountain that was working. So I said, we're going to build one. We're going to replicate that because it's not stealing if it doesn't work.
Right.
But to pay homage and respect to the oldest absinthe house in America, we're going to replicate that exact fountain, try to figure out how to make it. It's a water fountain. Everyone thinks it just dispenses absinthe. It doesn't dispense absinthe. It dispenses water. And so we're like, we're going to put an absinthe fountain behind the bar with a Napoleon statue on it. And it was like, so Maison was like this love story, to New York, about America by way of New Orleans. And it was just the soul and passion of New Orleans was like bottled up. Mm-hmm. Today, we're not a New Orleans bar. None of us are from there. Right. None of our team is from there. We're not trying to be. But of course, when you mention New Orleans as an inspiration, the media takes that and then everyone just labels you, you're a New Orleans bar.
Yeah,
and it's like, I get it why you'd say that, but we believe we're a very New York bar. I mean, the products, the style of service, the style of everything we're doing, I feel like it's a very New York place, but it's just inspired by that soul. So, cool. So that's kind of, when you ask how it came about, we knew we wanted to be different. We knew we wanted to stand out. Mm-hmm. We knew we wanted to tell a story that wasn't being told. And we knew we wanted it to be like American and kind of historic in its origins, to kind of anchor it and to give it purpose.
So you're in the hold of the Carloses.
Yeah.
And you guys finally open. What were you thinking at the moment when you finally decided it's time to open the bar? I mean, did you think people would automatically come, and really what happened?
It's funny. I don't think there was definitely no financial model. When
we need to make this much
projections.
Yeah.
No, there was no projections. There's no projections. It was none of that. It was, we're going to build something so audacious that it can't fail. Okay. We just knew as New Yorkers, we had consumed so much here.
Yep.
We knew what was here, but more importantly, we knew what wasn't here. We never looked at what people were doing. We always looked at what they weren't doing.
Yep, that makes sense.
And so Maison was born out of what didn't exist. Not let's copy Death and Company or da-da-da. Nope. I mean, we were doing maximalist cocktail garnishes when they were doing no garnish. I mean, they were doing boozy stirred. If you go back to like that era.
Yeah, totally.
Milk and honey was like a raspberry on your bramble. It was not maximalist garnish. It wasn't guys in three-piece suits and silver trays and champagne and seafood towers.
Right.
No one in Brooklyn served champagne by the glass but River Cafe. Fun fact, like in that era.
That makes sense.
We were the only place. And so, we were doing something that just hadn't been done. And then you add dollar oysters on top of it with the largest oyster menu in America, the largest absinthe menu in America, which is still true to this day. And you can see why it just kind of was like lightning striking. And doing that in a neighborhood that was so underserved. Mm-hmm. But had such an appetite for creativity and food and bev.
It's where all the other cool stuff was happening at that point.
The people were there. Like maybe if we did it in the Upper East Side, we would have crashed and burned. I don't know. But we happened to, luck is a part of success, right? Mm-hmm. And we happened to get really lucky, and the economics of business were very different then. Again, if we did it today, I don't know. But, cost of doing business is much lower. And it just was like lightning striking. And we just said it has to be the best that we can possibly make it and push the limits on every inch of the build out, on every category, fit as many wines on the menu as you can, as many oysters as we can fit behind the bar, just go like all the way. And we did that. And I think that's what made it so special opening up, because it was like this mecca of mollusks, this like temple of obscure products. People could come and just nerd out for days. It was like endless nerding out on interesting stuff.
Were you worried that people would be turned off by absinthe, or that you would have to, that idea would fail in terms of the bar?
The way we viewed it with a common sense was like, here's a product that's been banned for 90 years.
Yeah.
That essentially has no demand for. It's incredibly expensive. Like a bottle of absinthe in those days was $50, $60 a bottle, $70 a bottle, some of it, when, gin was 15. And so to build a business around a product that people don't know, there's no demand for, and is incredibly expensive, margins are very low, that would be a mistake. But for us, it was, this is going to give us an anchor and a point of view. We're going to be known for this because we decided to put energy and focus into trying to like restore an absinthe culture and service, because we believed in like absinthe culture was a beautiful thing.
Yep.
In a different era. And if we could serve it in the most kind of honorable way, historic way, restore the integrity of absinthe service, because it had been ruined by lots of nonsense around Europe and around the world, lighting it on fire and a lot of like, artificially colored stuff. And so there's all kinds of junk out there. But, the Holy Trinity is grand wormwood, anise, and fennel. It's organic by nature and has lots of medicinal purposes. And you dilute it, 4 to 5 to 1. And so it's actually a really beautiful expression of a product and a ceremony and a ritual. And we wanted to kind of have that as a part of the story, but we also knew that we couldn't invest too much into that. So even to this day, if you look at our Instagram account or anything like that, you rarely find absinthe posts. It's there, but we also focused on the classics, drinks from the South. We wanted to have kind of a Southern influence in the cocktail making. A lot of historical drinks that had been forgotten about, kind of bring them back and juice them up with lots of spirit and soul and garnish. And then there was a real progressive part of the menu. We knew that the menu couldn't just be one-sided, that, we were competing with other bars and we wanted to be recognized and relevant since we didn't have a reputation.
Yeah. And
we said, if we're going to play the game, why not play it all the way? And so I would say 30% of the menu was just like innovative. So it was just pure creativity, ingredients and combinations and products that were just completely proprietary to Maison Premiere, like you'd see in other bars. And then there was a portion of the menu that was like New Orleans classics, classics from the South. And then there was a portion, and it wasn't labeled that way. Yep. And then there was another part of the menu that was like these just classic cocktails from the past that we were bringing back, like sherry cobblers and things like that. And so, so there was a lot of strategy behind the menu creation and curation. And even to this day, it's like putting a drink on the menu is a big deal. Like it doesn't just happen. It's not like, oh, who's got some ideas? I mean, it's tightly controlled. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. And we're really about less is more now. And so in the early days, we were doing like 30 cocktail menu changes. And we were doing it 4 times a year.
Right.
And it was like, we're there tasting. I'm there every day tasting the drinks, pushing the garnishes, pushing the team, being as competitive as we could be. And we were doing that season after season. And at some point we realized there was a lot of press about some of the drinks, and it was probably smart to like not change those. And so the core menu started to expand, like the classics, the Maison classics, if you will, like the absinthe pina colada. Oh, you can't take that off. Oh, we can't take the Walcott Express off. Oh, we can't, before you know it, it's like a pretty solid foundation. And so then it became really about strategic changes. Like, how do we do a lot of innovation? And sometimes it'll take months for a drink, tasting, playing with it before it goes live. And now that's kind of our strategy now, all these years later.
What was the drink from your memory that was the first to become famous, that you were just like, wow, this is, we have a banger on our hands. This is a real hit.
Yeah. I mean, It's hard to say because there were so many, but I would say, and I could be wrong on this. I'm sure my team's going to point their finger at me and say I'm wrong. But I would say the one that really kind of took New York by storm was the absinthe pina colada.
Yeah.
Or the absinthe colada, I should say. It wasn't called the pina colada, the absinthe colada. That was like Time Out's top 100 beverages or food and beverage items of the year in whatever year it was, 2008 or something.
Yeah.
I mean, there was like a full page to it. It was, now you see colada this, colada that. There was none of that. Right. We took a classic kind of terrible drink, not terrible, but a drink that you'd have on holiday somewhere.
On the beach, yeah.
Typically wasn't made very well. Definitely wasn't respected in the craft cocktail world, right? So we took that drink, re-engineered it with great ingredients, added absinthe to it, right? Garnished it beautifully, and it just became a sensation because it was so different to what was out there. And it was kind of like, this is kind of fun. It was like we were tapping into this like fun movement, which wasn't very craft. Like, again, the places I named, those were serious places. They weren't like, this isn't fun. This is like, take me serious.
You didn't talk.
Cracking ice. Yeah, the bartenders were very serious. It was like hard to get their attention serious, right? It was not about fun, and garnishes weren't about fun.
No.
But Maison, because it was like high energy, we had this garden that opened up year 2 in a tropical garden. We kind of designed it around the Garden District in New Orleans, so tons of tropical plants. And we realized like there needed to be another part to Maison's evolution, which was like this Tropicalia movement. So we call it Tropicalia. And it's kind of like these drinks that are tropically inspired because New Orleans is tropical climate, and when it's hot and balmy out and sticky, you kind of crave something refreshing. And so we played into the tropical garden as an excuse to have a new kind of genre. Again, it wasn't labeled. We didn't label it as that. It just slowly started to evolve. Like the Jungle Bird came, and the absinthe colada, a pina colada did come eventually, like in this young coconut where it's branded with a branding iron, has like a huge mint bouquet. And so there was this kind of tropical movement and many, many drinks that were added that had crushed ice and that were kind of acid forward and lighter, which was very different than what was going on in the cocktail scene at that time.
When did you realize that the bar was successful?
It was pretty immediate. I mean,
that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, defining success then and now, it's like it's completely different. But it was, Robert Simonson came out within 24 hours, and he was writing for the New York Times and wrote about us. It was like 24 hours or 48 hours. And from that moment, lines started to form. Infatuation, I think, was the first, and then Robert Simonson. And lines would start to form outside, and then every day there were lines that went down the street. So we would judge our success every day by how many people were in line before opening. So we'd open at 4, and so all the things I told you that we did as a first for a craft cocktail bar, having absinthe, having raw bar, having oysters, having this huge wine list. I mean, we had a couple hundred wines on a menu. That was unheard of for like a craft cocktail bar.
No, not at all.
Having like proper service, like kind of refined, almost fine dining style New Orleans service with guys in suits walking around and silver trays. And so we were doing all these things, but another thing that we did is we did dollar oysters. And we did it early on because we thought we had to survive, to get the oysters to move. Because if we're going to have a lot of oysters,
you got to sell them.
You got to sell them, and you're buying 100 per oyster. So when you buy a bag of whatever oyster you're buying, it's 100. So when you have 10 different oysters in your menu, that's 1,000 oysters you're sitting on that are highly perishable. And if you have 15, that's 1,500. So Well, we opened up with 15 and we went to 33 oysters. So the only way to like move them was dollar oysters. And so we did this dollar oyster thing, and it just exploded. So lines down the street, round the block, and it was just one publication after another. So I think it was pretty immediate. Now that didn't mean we were swimming in cash. It didn't mean that everything was great. The infrastructure wasn't built for that volume. Our oyster bar couldn't keep up.
Yep.
We had one small ice machine, not knowing what volume was going to be and how much we were going to go through. And now we have 3 of those.
Good.
We have 4 ice machines total, but we have 3 just to keep up with oysters.
Wow.
That are a couple $1,000 each. So we learned painfully the hard way. I mean, it was brutal. And there was a lot of things that didn't go well, and we had to fix them quickly, and we had to reinvest into infrastructure and expanding. And so eventually we built a second oyster bar in the garden and a second bar to keep up with the demand because ticket times were atrocious. So there was a lot of growing pains, from the earliest days. But yeah, it was pretty much successful from the beginning.
Is there ever a time that the bar is slow?
I think that funny enough, our slow season is like the holiday season, which everyone thinks is like the best. And I think it is in the city.
Yeah.
Tourist and corporate events and things. And for some reason, Williamsburg, even to this day, December, January are probably our quietest months of the year.
Okay.
But, still solid, but definitely the slowest time of the year.
You're just trying to figure out when I can get in. Yeah. It's pretty impossible. I mean, with all of that press too, you've had, every time I've been there, you've had such an international crowd as well. I've sat next to people at the bar before who've asked me about like the martini from Japan, and I've talked to people from France. And how does your staff sort of also handle being both a neighborhood bar and catering to clearly cocktail or drinks and restaurant tourists? Because I feel like that probably is a delicate dance of still maintaining the regulars while also catering to people that, part of their whole vacation is coming to Maison.
Yeah.
And how do you work with your team to make sure they handle both?
A big part of, obviously I'm a cheerleader for what we do and I'm talking about it because I just think if you don't talk about it, people don't know.
Yeah.
And so it's not bragging. It's just making sure that the message is clear. And I think with our staff, we talk a lot about our reputation, the accolades, the awards, the meaning of it, but it's not about this braggadocious thing. I mean, we don't even have like a James Beard Award hanging in our dining room.
Yeah.
Not there's anything wrong with if you do. We just don't. Yes, it happened, but for us, and it's exciting and it's incredible, but for us, I talk about this all the time. I talked about this yesterday with my chef. To answer your question, there's this awareness throughout Maison's culture, which is just because we succeeded then or we achieved this then, it doesn't guarantee tomorrow. It doesn't guarantee today. We're only as good as service today. And so people from around the world read about us, just like we read about places when we travel the world. And there's nothing more disappointing than planning a trip somewhere far away and you're excited and all the hype. And that's the worst thing about hype and press is because your expectations are so high. So high. You'd be better off if you just stumbled into Maison than if someone tells you, it's the best, and then you go expecting the best. And then maybe if we miss our mark a little bit, you're frustrated and leave.
You hold it more against the places that you're told is best, even if it's a small slip.
Exactly. So I think for us, it's like we talk about it. The nice thing is, I've been there for 15 years since it opened. I'm there 50 hours a week by choice. They don't have to be. My office is above it. My partner Krystof as well, co-founder. Our bar director William's been there for 15 years, who runs the bars. Ben Crispin, our general manager, has been with us for 15 years.
Wow.
So our executive core has all been there since the beginning. And so we're like brothers. I mean, we dine out all the time. We travel. We have been a part of all of the success and challenges and things that we've gone through together. But what is consistent is like we're obsessed with hospitality and culture and maintaining high standards. To answer your question, the staff come into Maison and they're constantly told about our past. And the importance of every day maintaining that past. And it doesn't mean we do it perfectly every day. As you know, you're relying on a lot of people. And we have a lot of good people. We've had a lot of dedicated people over the years. But things happen, and so servers have bad days, bartenders have bad days, managers have bad days, cooks have bad days. And you have to keep doing your best. But you have to constantly remind people of the mission, of the vision, because it's easy when you're 10 years old or now we're 15 years old, and early on you have a lot of success, it's so easy to become complacent. You just put your feet up on the table and be like, we're chilling. Like, just keep it on, auto play.
Right.
And we don't sleep. Like, the beverage program changes 4 times a year, and it has since the day we opened. Not huge changes, but it changes. Beverage, the wine program is always evolving. The wine's by the glass, the beer's on tap. Every time they kick, there's a different beer that goes on. It's not the same.
Right.
And that is with the food. The oysters, we have 80 different oysters in our repertoire, but we have 30 every day, but it's changing every day.
Yeah.
So nothing is still, even though it appears to be when you go in there. And I think the staff are just constantly, reminded of the importance of just maintaining that world-class reputation. We talk about world-class reputation. It's like, we want to be the Ivy League of the bar world. We want to be like the place where people come and are inspired around the world for our excellence.
I love it.
But that comes down to like that discipline every day. Excellence isn't an act. it's a daily habit.
So when a lot of places like Maison find success, often the ownership gets a little itchy, bored, et cetera. They want to open something else. You have opened some other things.
Mm-hmm.
What was the decision process around opening something else? And were you nervous when you decided to do that Maison could suffer in some way?
Yeah, I think, as creative people, as entrepreneurs, Maison was our second place. There was obviously this desire to do more, but we were really resisting another Maison because we just thought there are places in the world, and we all know restaurants, whether it's Spain or Italy or France, where it's like one place.
Yep.
It's an institution. There's only one Keen Steakhouse. There's only one, whatever it is, the JG Mellon, or it doesn't matter. It could be high end, low end, doesn't matter. But there's like these institutions that have a magic to them and a soul and a spirit. And I think, of course, capitalizing on that and monetizing on that is like the way Americans think. It's like, scale it, build 10. We
like
felt
one in every city.
Yeah, and it's like, I think we could. I think we could have, maybe not every city, but I think you could have 10. But we just fought that internally. We just felt like, it's going to dilute it in some way, And we just thought, why don't we just build new things? You make an album that's great, make a new album.
Right.
And that's the way we viewed it, was like creatively, we just wanted to do new work, challenge ourselves in a new way, keep Maison really special and never let it slip. And we've tried to do that. And I think, 15 years is kind of a testament to that.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, so expanding has to happen because the problem with our industry is most of us don't own the real estate.
Yep.
Because it's just so expensive. The economics wouldn't work. If I bought the building, what I'd have to pay for a mortgage, we'd never be able to cover it. There'd be no profit. It just doesn't work. So at some point, the music stops. Leases end. Buildings get demolished. I've seen it happen a lot in Williamsburg, especially. The original pastis, where did it go? Restoration Hardware took it. And then what do? You have to raise a couple million to build a new Maison. Where do you get the money? So the way we've viewed expansion is, and I think Maison will grow eventually now. I think we're at a point where we feel so confident that if we do it right in the right place at the right time, and we give it as much energy as we gave the first, that it would be amazing to share it with the country in a bigger way or the world. But we're not interested in selling the company to do that. We're not interested in giving up control of the company to do that. We're not interested in personal guaranteeing multi-million-dollar loans to do that right now. So we have to decide how we want to do it. And but we did build other places, and we are currently building new places, just new brands, and we're just doing it carefully and kind of strategically when opportunities come that don't require too much risk on our end. A lot of times, developers approach you, and they're willing to finance the build out, or it's a management deal, or some type of hybrid deal. For us, we look at it and say, maybe I wouldn't have gone to that neighborhood in the Lower East Side to build Tigre. That wasn't a plan. But when a developer comes to you and says, hey, I'll finance this and we want something spectacular there, you look at it twice and say, well, could I do something meaningful there? And so I think our goal is not to grow just to make money, but to grow to impact the game. Like Maison impacted the game in a big way.
Yeah.
We think Tigre is doing something very different in terms of like refined and luxury cocktail experiences.
Yeah, totally.
It's not just a nerdy cocktail bar and it's not a restaurant. And so we're trying to build places that have like a big impact, even if they're small places. So, but with the right opportunities and the right, offers, we'll make those decisions as they come. But
makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. I have 3 questions for you to end our show. So first one is, if you could open a bar or restaurant anywhere in the world, where would you?
Easy. London. Yeah.
Why?
We spent 3 years there.
Yeah. You said you were doing a management deal, right?
We were
or
doing a
consulting?
huge consulting, consulting hospitality development deal there. And it's an international city.
Yep.
Deeply cultured, huge food culture, chef culture, access to great product, sophisticated, great architecture, vibrant. And, there's some really great spaces that would be perfect. There's a lot of pub pubs, but like buildings that have pubs with inns above it.
Ah.
And so they're everywhere. It's like everywhere. And so you could easily see a Maison going into some like old pub that's 3 floors.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Maison on the ground floor. Maybe you have a second floor, and then maybe you have like a couple guest rooms or something.
That's really cool, yeah.
And so, I shouldn't be saying this to the world, but so that's a city that we spent enough time to know, I think. And there's also nothing like Maison there.
Yeah.
By the way, it's just unheard of, and I think it would fit in nicely. So
yeah, same along with your idea, right? You go bring something that doesn't exist, not something that does exist. So
absolutely,
makes a lot of sense.
But there's kind of a pubbiness to Maison, isn't there? I mean, I've never said that, but there's something about it's kind of lowbrow, highbrow feeling when you're in it. A lot of those pubs are like, you think of pubs as lowbrow, but when you go to London, the pubs there were like incredible architecture, etched glass and like solid mahogany everywhere. I mean, there's pubs and then there's pubs.
Yeah, and sometimes you go to pubs and like the food you have is Michelin star dining
especially
level.
Right now.
Yeah.
So, there's a whole revival of great pubs that are happening. So I think we would be a great contribution to the city.
Very cool. If you could drink only one cocktail at Maison Premiere, what would it be?
Oh, I don't want to say it. I won't say it. I'll pick a different one. I would say Will's Daiquiri.
Okay.
It's not on the menu.
Okay.
If it was going to be from the menu, I would say it's probably going to be the King Gold Martini.
Yeah, I mean,
and the thing with the martini thing is that it's slightly annoying because it's become so popular.
You guys were there way ahead again.
Thank you. It's like I remember when we started doing martinis, I had to fight with a bar team about this idea. Like in the craft cocktail world, everyone laughs at martinis. It was just like 15 years ago. It wasn't 15, but it was probably 12, 10 years ago when we started doing it. Just was not a good idea for craft. But I felt really strongly after going to London and seeing great martini experiences at some of the old hotels like Duke's and Connaught and coming back. And I just said, it's so us though. We have to do it in our way with like a silver tray and a two-person team shows up to the table and there's a narrative behind it. And it would just be awesome. And we did it and it wasn't really popular. And then it exploded. And now it's like,
it's everywhere, right? I mean, now everyone does it, but I mean, I think you guys are credited not only for making the martini serious in New York, again, but also, I hear multiple times you're really credited with introducing every other bartender that uses Old Raj to Old Raj.
Sure. There was no one using Old Raj.
No one else.
And I can't take credit for that. That's a Will Elliott thing, but no one was using Old Raj. I mean, but Old Raj has saffron. It's beautiful, high proof.
Yeah.
It's just so perfect. And again, it's not just the theater. See, that's the thing with Maison. It's not just show and theater. It's like, there's substance.
Yeah.
Like that martini is spectacular.
Yeah, it is.
Forget how cool it looks and tableside service. And so I think that's timeless. I don't think that's going out.
Yeah.
Maybe martinis will fade out like everything. We're going to keep doing it.
Yep.
5 years, 10 years. It'll be there forever, as long as we can. And so I think it's, it's something that we're going to, keep doing long into the future. But I love cocktails, but there's something just timeless about the tableside martini service. It's like going to a steakhouse and having the prime rib trolley come by.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't love prime rib.
Right.
Or tableside Caesar salad or something. There's something about that celebration. And I think that's a big part of the Maison experience is like this kind of celebratory escapism.
Yeah.
Which used to be a part of dining in a major way. And of course, as you know, has come back. Everyone is doing tableside things now. And it's great. It's fun for the consumers to have that option. But I think Maison, if I could order a cocktail or I could order a tableside cocktail, it's nothing more glorious than sitting there with your guest and a manager rolls over in a vintage suit, silver tray, and there's a guy holding the tray with a bow tie and they've got a frozen bottle of Old Raj, building you this martini, telling you the story of it, serving you with a frozen glass, pouring it tableside. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as beautiful as the absinthe drip or as beautiful as a tableside, flambe. So I don't think anything really beats that.
No. I think there's something interesting. You're talking about this of just connecting your history to a lot of the bars that have been really successful at the theater. And I think the thing that connects a lot of you in this industry who've been really successful with understanding the guest and the theater experience is a background in nightlife.
Yeah.
Right? This understanding of what that guest... Yeah, okay, you're not, this isn't this isn't Tao, right? But you understand that when a customer is going out, they want a similar experience in terms of how they feel. They want to feel great. They want to be entertained. And if they're going to spend a lot of money, they want to impress their guests. And I think that nightlife teaches you that in a way that a lot of other schools of bartending and bars just don't in the 100%. Same way.
I also think there's one more thing to add to that is, for me, luxury is not what something costs or what the brand is. It's how it makes you feel.
Yep.
And that sounds so but it is. And so if a martini makes you feel like $1 million because it's made tableside, that's what it's all about at the end of the day. So,
totally.
Yeah.
Last question. If you give one piece of advice to someone that says they want to open a bar or restaurant, what would that piece of advice be?
Only do it if you absolutely love it. I think the guys that are super successful at this are doing it because they're passionate about it every day. It is a never ending, because there is no success. It's not, you get reviewed by the Times.
Yeah.
How many restaurants get reviewed by the Times and are closed in 2 years?
Yeah, totally.
It's not, you fill the seats. Well, yeah, you can fill the seats for a year. And how many restaurants close after 3? So the restaurants that stay going, especially New York, most competitive market in the world, the restaurants that stay in business and that are acknowledged and written about and respected are places that are just run by passion. Whether it's a small neighborhood place or it's a place in one of the hottest dining neighborhoods in the city, doesn't matter. If you're going to get into the business, get into the restaurants, even as a partner, you have to really be a consumer. You have to be out all the time, educating yourself all the time, and love it. You have to love it, because there's nothing about Maison that's not born from love and passion. That's ongoing.
Yeah.
The amount of all of us involved, and my partner and I are the co-founders, but the rest of the team, from chefs to general managers to William, are just constant, autodidacts, students, learning, reading. We're all going out. I mean, four nights a week, going out, new openings, just constantly learning, traveling the world. So, it's easy to walk into a place like, this is awesome, I want to do this, and not realizing that it's decades of work to get to a point to build a place like that. It's so anyways, yeah, I mean, I think it's probably, the case for many businesses, but I would say restaurants are very dangerous to play with.
They are.
They can burn a lot of cash very quickly, and they're unforgiving. So you better love it.
Very true. Well, Joshua, thank you so much for joining me on VinePair's The Buildout and for telling us the story of Maison Premiere. It's awesome.
Absolutely. And also, I do have a little gift for you.
Oh, wow.
The Maison Premiere Almanac came out in 2023.
Yeah.
This has the story of building Maison, Barracu, everything's in there in the opening, but it also has so much more involved in, oysters and cocktail culture and technique. I mean, it's amazing. Cool. So I have a couple for you guys. I think this one's for you, Adam.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Congratulations for all the success with VinePair.
So. Cool. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Thanks so much for listening to VinePair's The Buildout. The show is produced, filmed, recorded, and edited by Darby Seasai. Editorial direction from VinePair's editor-in-chief, Joanna Chirino. Design of the logo by Marcello Bevilacqua. And thanks to the entire VinePair team, especially my co-founder, Joshua Mallon. I've been your host, Adam Teeter. Until next time, thanks for listening.